Kia ora whanau, welcome back to another podcast with this program that we are leading with police in a partnership. Thank you so much for joining and watching this one. I have a very special guest today and a new topic to talk about it. Stay with us, we'll find out more now. Awesome, welcome back guys. And today we have really very special guest. Shortly we will be introducing and have a corridor with. But was joining me today again, Rata. How are you, Rata?
I'm doing fabulously. How are you, Kodrin?
I'm good, thank you. Are you excited about this topic today?
I'm very excited, and it's been lovely to be back in the studio. We've had some amazing events, and I'm just really, really excited to chat today, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one I'm very excited too, because it's been a while we didn't be on the studio. So let's find out more about today. And I have amazing person here, Terry. How are you and welcome?
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here, nice to be invited here. My name is Terry Fraser, and I've been in the Wellington Police for 25 years, and I was born in Wellington and raised in Wellington. So, very fond of our beautiful area, and like to be involved. Sports is my sort of number one occupation outside of the police. Yeah, so it's nice to be here and talk about family harm.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Terry, for introducing yourself and welcome to our show. You just want to tell you what made you to stay 25 years in police? What is the passion there?
It's a very good question, and it's actually a question I've probably asked myself more recently, whether it's because 25 is that sort of number. It's gone by really quickly. It's been a fantastic organisation to work for, opportunities. And I've probably described my sort of time in the police as a bit sort of victim-centric. So I've been initially through frontline policing, and then I've had about a dozen years in the criminal investigation branch, the majority of that in child protection and adult sexual assault and the child sex offender register. My current role is in the family harm coordinator for the district. So we have 4 teams throughout the district. 4 area teams, and so I just try and help support them, and while they're doing the essential mahi on the front line, and it's just that sort of empathetic wanting, I suppose deep down it's a very specific area where change and it changes and overnight in this area, but it can make a massive difference in people's lives. And so it's probably the motivation as to why I'm still here 25 years later.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you're a person who would love to help community, and it's just a great respect. And awesome, Terry. I think we will talk about family harm, right? And that's where your area of expertise. We really want to talk about this topic because there's a lot of people who may ask how we will know more about this topic and how we can get the support. So on this topic, we want to ask you, what is family harm? How we will identify it? First, let me read back the questions. So what is family harm and how we define it? Yeah.
Well, I can give you sort of 2 answers there. The family harm, which is actually a newer term we've used. You might have previously, or you can still refer or hear it being called like domestic violence or family violence. And so family harm is in my sort of understanding and view, and it's a more broader sort of area. But if we came back to like a strict definition, and it gets grouped into 3 different categories or titles in terms of an immediate police response. So you have physical, you have psychological, and you have sexual. So two of those obviously fairly self-explanatory. Physical harm, we're talking about assaults. Sexual harm, we're talking about sexual assaults. Psychological is that sort of more broad view or definition, and that could range from someone causing harm to someone in terms of restricting their movements or access to friends and communities and partners. It could be just, being told that they are, not good people, that they're not worth anything, and that always being sort of trodden on, I suppose, in some sense. There's someone sort of just essentially picking at their at their essential spiritual well-being, in a sense. So there are sort of three groups of what we broadly, one broadly, two specifically, would categorise family harm into. But family harm, and it's well reported in the media and commonly known, is that we have an extremely high rate of family harm in New Zealand compared to a number of other countries. So what suggests a lot of people are subject to it, both as perpetrators and victims, or people just exposed to it, because that is actually an area which would probably fit under the psychological title, where, another person is harming another person, but you're a third person who's being exposed to it. And this is when we're talking about our tamariki and our, our young people and that. And that is now well research considered to be a real detrimental effect too. So in a sense, we police obviously were going to respond to these family harm events, and whilst we are the first responder often in a call for help or a call for service, there is a number of very, very good specialised community groups, government groups that then actually come together to address that family harm. But
I think while you're talking about that, it's just brought me into thoughts about what are the, because you mentioned that we are facing high rates, right, in New Zealand. Do you know what is the reasons about that? If you mentioned, like, what is the common reason that making this high rate in New Zealand?
And if I had the answer to that,
All right.
I would. Who knows where I maybe? I might be. On a few more podcasts.
Right. Yeah. You're right.
Look, there is some of the common understandings that lead to family harm, from poverty to substance abuse, to mental health status, through other pressures and stresses that we have in life. Cost of living currently might be one now. So a lot of those influences are very apparent in today's society, and then unfortunately they can trigger a harm event, a family harm event. In terms of the police now and what we understand around family harm, and because there's often this underlying factor. So if you can imagine, someone calling police for help, something's generally escalated to become fairly serious, that, you think, when would you call police, And we've begun to understand that, yes, we need to go and respond to that event or that episode, is that we understand that it probably is just one episode, and there's probably underlying factors and underlying reasons. And whilst that isn't necessarily going to be a defence or a reason to be able to cause harm, it is important in terms of we're going to get accountability to prevent harm in the future, to identify the best support services, to get the best accountability, to get the best outcome, to ensure that harm doesn't continue. We now have an approach of what we call eyes wide open. Yeah. So whilst initial attending officers are there very much dealing with something quite specific, they've also absorbing what else is happening here. What are they seeing? Are they talking to other people that have, children, tamariki, that have been exposed to it, to really get that understanding about what is that underlying cause.
Yeah.
And then we can really start to address the problem.
That's great.
And just probably one other thing is that whilst the stats around family harm aren't pleasant reading, we are encouraged that the higher reporting means that people are prepared to report. And that hopefully will be eventually a good thing, because if we can then get the right services and support in place, we're actually looking at preventing it in the future. There is a national strategy, Te Arakura, with a 25-year plan commenced in about 2021 to eliminate family harm and sexual violence in New Zealand. So that's a big statement.
Exactly,
it's a big goal. It's a wonderful one. So whilst we get rising numbers, maybe we're getting a truer picture, so we can actually respond better too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you so much for, especially I think I didn't know too much about that really holistic definition of family harm. I think that's really helpful, both your explanation in terms of what it is, we all kind of have that understanding, but also in terms of underlying factors and why it might be occurring. Given that, and that there are different types of family harm in terms of both physical and psychological and things, when do you think, how can we identify it, and when should someone be stepping in? If it's sort of low level and you're seeing things that might not quite be right, how do you know kind of when is time to try and intervene and help?
I often relate it to what would I expect if someone saw behaviour that was occurring to my own whānau or family. What would I expect someone who saw that to do? But at the same time appreciating that can be really difficult depending on the context or the circumstance of where you suspect it or you see it or you get told about it. And for a lot of people, going to the police is a pretty big call. People may have not had any intervention with the police or any reason to have, spoken to a police officer or be visited by a police officer. And one of our sort of developments and learning is that we are only a seat at the family harm table. So now we have more of a collective group of organisations, so government organisations, non-government organisations, community groups, and whilst the police obviously are attending a number of family harm incidents, so we are gathering that initial information. We're not actually keeping it to ourselves. So I think if we can get that message out there, that whilst you're bringing something to the police's attention, it might not be the police that respond, because it might be that there is no place for really police other than maybe the initial attendants to be the next organisation or person to help or support that person, that whānau. So I sort of think we sort of just need to be able to let people know that reporting it, you're not going into this sort of police crime courts process necessarily. I mean, sort of not around about 50 to 60% of family harm events that we go to, we don't have any criminal offence disclosed to us, or we suspect one. So actually about over half of the family harm events we're going to you could say, are not police related or need police further involvement. They're actually might be a mental health aspect. It might be a substance. It might be some behaviour, anger and that, which might not pass the threshold of, being a criminal investigation or a criminal process. But because you've come to the police, we're then able to share it with our partner agencies. So I think people, you need to feel, to pass on information, you need to trust someone. You need to trust an organisation. And I often also refer to it as, transfer the burden, because once you think something's not right, if you carry that yourself, that becomes quite hard too. So you need to reach out to someone that you can, it might not be the police in the very first instance, but it might be someone that you can trust to, hear what you're thinking and what you're concerned about, who then might have some, and they might contact an organisation that isn't police, but that organisation might be part of our table, So that's, be confident. And then, I sort of really encourage, if it's safe, you always want to make sure you are safe, and the other person is safe, because it can cause, reactions which make people unsafe. But, simply asking is everything okay? To someone, just as simple as that can be, and they might not answer you straight away, but they might come back. So, so reaching out and not being too sort of, have they done this? Have they done that? It might just be, are you okay?
That's right.
Thank you so much, Terry. I find that really, really encouraging, especially given I think we all probably are aware that New Zealand doesn't have the best history of interventions, especially, it's been a lot in the media in terms of, poor results for interventions with children and things like that. But it's really, really fantastic to hear that, that you have so many services available, like a call to the police and things like that isn't a punishment for, I'm recognizing that something's wrong and now I want this person to go to prison, because that's what I tend to think of in terms of calling the police. But actually it's a first call for help and actually a referral towards other services. So I find that really, really, really encouraging. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more. You've referred to, sort of these some different services that might be available in terms of, anger and sort of dealing with different issues. But what might that process look like if you do make a call, and what services are available?
Yeah, sure. And, we're always striving to have a wider specialised intervention service. We know the pressures on, especially our big, our Rangatamariki organisation. On the the police, we are really challenged now about even getting to these family harm resources, and and there's funding challenges and all those things as well. But there's a real strong desire by, I believe, everyone within this sort of family harm group, and everyone is trying, and so that's a really good starting point. We'll develop and we'll get better. But in terms of the response of, say the police are called and police turn up, we obviously make people safe. We then record details, and it goes on a form, an electronic form, and then before a police officer leaves, they need to make some decisions, and one of the mandated decisions is that they have to make sure everyone's safe for the next 72 hours. And that could be as simple as, the victims or the people at risk, they are prepared to ring the police if something else happens again. It might be the other extreme where there isn't an arrest made, and so someone is taken away. It might be we have other interventions like police safety orders where we can actually issue an order on a person to actually they have to remove themselves from the home or anything like that, and we might speak to other whānau or neighbours who are prepared to watch and listen and and then report and things like that. So that's one of our priority is making people safe and keeping people safe. Then a whole lot of information is gathered through that in a report, and then that comes to we have a specialised family harm group within the police, and they then essentially add to that eyes wide open. So understanding that having a look at the history, having a look at what else have we come to intervene with these people in any other way, and forming an overall risk assessment, especially around further harm occurring. And depending on that level of risk, anything is what determines their actions, whether they need to be immediate or whether they can hold it off for a day or two or a week or no reaction or no response at all. But then, and depending where you are in the country and actually even within Wellington, the areas, is that the groups the family harm groups are made up of key government organisations, Oranga Tamariki, Arapotamu, corrections, refuge services, and they'll either meet depending on where you are. They'll either meet on a daily basis, so they'll go through every family harm event we've been to in the last 24 hours, and those organisations are there to essentially bring all the information that they've got, maybe because police we might not have dealt with this family or this whānau before, but another organisation may have, And respecting privacy and what needs to be known is that there's a great amount of information to then assess risk and also then implement the best support services to follow up with.
Yeah.
So the information is shared. So that can happen on a daily one. And then there's like a weekly meeting where we might sort of identify and it's not just police, it's once again, we're just a seat at the table. We've brought some information, but we're actually really relying on everyone else, And all these decisions that are made are actually not just police, they're actually a group decision. So everyone inputs and then the group decide on what the decisions will be in terms of actions to be taken or who will lead the action. And one of the other sort of great initiatives of this is what we call trying to stop, like 4 or 5 interventions by different organisations with one whānau, and, so the whole day is interrupted with a knock or a ring at the door and they repeat the information 5 or 6 times. So we're looking at rather, so we would actually respond potentially with the best organisations. So that might have a police presence, it might not. It might have, representatives from 2 or 3 other organisations. So to address those issues.
Yeah. So Terry, this is all look great. Like there's it's a bunch of organizations on table to try help the victims or solve this kind of situations. I want to ask you questions about what about safety and the privacy of this people? How you guys will handle this when there's a lot of information being shared on the table?
Yeah. So the organisations that meet are accredited. So it has to go through a process where you've got people within your organisation who've got some sort of family harm experience, knowledge, understanding, maybe qualifications. And then there's agreements about privacy. Right. So the information that is shared is for that table only and for the purpose of essentially making people safe or providing the right intervention. So that organisation, whether it be police or another organisation, whoever is, the person representing that organisation at the table is not able to then just, even within their own organisation, just start talking about a person or a whānau. So we absolutely, recognise that privacy issue is paramount for some people, right? But we have understood that also it is important for those organisations to share. So that's where the legislation has been tweaked in the last few years to allow some of this sharing of relevant information that your organisation has that would or is directly related to the family harm episode that we're dealing with. So I can't bring the inland revenue and talk about, because it's not, retention, you know what I mean? So there's a respect. And then also each organisation obviously reviews, because they, prior to the meeting, they are aware of what whānau we're talking about. And they would gather the information and then review and only bring the relevant information and then only disclose that information that's needed in terms of an intervention plan or a safety plan or a further follow-up plan,
No, I think this is very important, because people, watching and listening, just to assure them that the most important is reporting and you're in the safe hands, that this organization, the purpose of those informations are to try protect the victims and try to deal with that case only and not be used in other purposes. So that's just assuring the people, increasing reporting and access to the service.
Because the nature of family harm, I'll just come, back to it. If someone's seen something or they're concerned with something, we've recognised that family harm episodes or events or particular incidents are generally not isolated. So your information is your information is a part of the jigsaw. So that's why it is really important, even if you don't think it's maybe that serious, or they're going to sort it out or something like that, because there might be other pieces of that jigsaw. Police might have, someone else might have. So if we can bring it all together, that's going to be really helpful in terms of preventing harm reoccurring.
Right.
What are some of those measures that are taken to prevent that harm? It sounds like you've got a really good, process in terms of those holistic organisations coming together. What is kind of the process after this event to, kind of prevent anything happening in the future and kind of restore that kind of well-being?
So once again, that could be a real range depending on what's occurred, and especially if there has been a criminal offence occurred, if there hasn't been a criminal offence occurred. Interim things, I talked about things like police safety orders, which prevent, someone being at a place or contacting someone for 3 or 4, for a range of up to sort of 14 days. I might have to double check that number. It's just a short-term one. They're usually sort of for 3 to 5 days. And that sort of allows then an organisation, maybe say Refuge or say Aroha Tamariki, to then enter that home safely and then to be able to complete a further assessment about. And that might identify things then like truancy or substance abuse, or anger behaviour issues. So then those organisations, the core ones, like especially around say Aroha Tamariki and MSD, have a number of other organisations that they contract out to that can then specifically be referred to. Now that could always be better, and there's response times and wait times, but that is the intent, is to identify what is the underlying factor and then what is the best referral. So we're talking substance abuse. It might be budgeting advice. Managing what creates the stress and around anxiety around money issues or something like that. It's not limiting. That's the beauty of the group and the beauty of a number of experts in a table dealing with a situation, rather than just a police-only led response. When I started 25 years ago, was very much the case. We would try and sort it out ourselves, and not always did a very good job.
I think which is cool that you just mentioned about the needs of the other partners and the community partners, especially who come from different organizations, different service, which just I'm aware about time, Terry, and new time. Want to ask you in kind of like a last question, if right, I don't have, but we have kind of 5 minutes left. My question will be, what service are available for the cultural groups or multicultural society that we're now going more? So is there any support in the language or any other supports available for those groups who come from different backgrounds?
Thanks for asking the question, because that is it is very limited. There are very few who have the capability or ability, just maybe through sort of funding or being able to be set up. New Zealand grows as a diverse cultural population. Look, we've got some real challenges in those areas, but once again, the intent is there to always help. There are depending on the area, it becomes very much around the table, identifying, establishing relationships, to bring especially minority ethnic community groups, maybe not to be involved in that daily meeting, but to be able to be accessed and utilised and helped. We've got some big organisations that are just, present throughout the country, some big NGOs even, and some go-to places there. But for some of the more, the ethnic minority groups, there are challenges around those. And they are really built up by our area teams and the area groups, trying to reach out, trying to make themselves available, accessible, So that is a development that is growing. There is, in terms of anyone coming into sort of, say, into police, for want of a better word, custody, and these language barriers, there is, 24/7 language lines and interpreting services that we can call on, especially if we need to work out something that's acute, that's causing some really acute safety risks, and these language barriers or cultural barriers, then there is some of those services. But they might not suit everyone at all. So, once we've made people initially safe, that's our family harm teams really trying to reach out to establish these relationships. So when they come to the family harm table's attention, we've got options to reach out in that. Right. But it's it's a challenge, and we do all we can to try and encourage those groups. But there is gaps. Unfortunately, there is gaps. Yeah. Right.
But I think that's the role of community can play. Maybe to come and find with the police to find the ways how to support, because community leaders care about the communities and try make safe place, safe environments, safe home and stuff. And
there's there is a lot of good relationships between communities and ethnic groups, and with certain within the police. You've mentioned Phil, and he sort of leads our sort of ethnic and cultural area, and so but they have relationships for all different reasons as well, because the police is a fairly big organisation, and we've got lots of groups and do lots of different types of work. So, if you've already got an established relationship, that's an encouragement. That those connections can be made. If you've someone who doesn't work in family harm, but you've got a connection with the police, those police can make connections as well and join us up. Yeah. And so we're always really willing to hear from you and from those groups and meet and decide how can we both help each other.
That's correct. Exactly. It's just cool to see that police attending a lot of community events. Just their existing there is just feel the community, good relationship, building the trust that can between the organization and the community, that they can feel safe and learning about the process and things, which is one of the way we're doing this kind of podcast to the people that know what is the issue, how to report it, how to identify it. And you have very nicely elaborate on those topics to today's podcast. I just want to thank you, and I'm worried about time, but right, any question, or we move to the message questions?
I'd just love to talk to you all day, Terence. That's so interesting. If I could ask very, very quickly, and just less than a minute or so, how can community members and individuals support support preventing that harm and supporting victims if they do know incidents? How can community help? Just quickly, that's the last question.
You can help by asking, and even if it is to say, to me, I feel something's not right, and when you're ready, it's okay, and we can reach out and find the best person or the best organisation, to help you. There is a number of, online, social media. You can ring the police on 111. You can ring the police on 105 even, which is a non-urgent sort of response thing. If something was urgent, you would always call 111. And like I say, it's releasing that burden, so often those people will probably know the best people that they need to tell or get help from, and that might lead to the police. It might lead to something else. Like I say, there are a lot of organisations out there who are really willing to help, and and they've got a really good appreciation of risk and safety as well, because that's what we ultimately want to make sure everyone is safe. So,
thank you so much, Terry. It's really, really appreciated.
Yeah, awesome. That was really good corridor. We have really covered identifying the issue and how we define it, the ways to report it, and as well talked a little bit on the challenges and the gaps that is there. The resource need to be done more for covering some other cultures and communities we work with. But again, doesn't stop us any backgrounds to keep reporting, keep working with police, because police have a good relationship with different community organizations, communities for different purposes, but they can find people within them can help in those scenarios.
One of the challenges we do have in the small ethnic communities and around that if we need translation or support and assistance. Yeah. Because they are small in nature, one of the difficult things is to manage to try and reduce any sort of shame on people or whānau or communities, and if it's a small community and they don't want to be seen as a community that's having family harm within their community, and so sometimes we do have the issue of an interpreter knowing
the family,
the people, so you get that conflict, so something more serious where an arrest is made and there's it's got to be a formal interview, and there's more of a national sort of translation service, but actually that more what I talk about, the safety plan and the intervention plan, where we're actually trying to address some issues and understand the underlying factors. That's where the challenges sometimes can be, because you can have that bias, bias in all ethnics and cultures. So maybe then you get minimisation, and then of course, because we haven't got these support agencies, specific to the sort of more minority groups to really be well resourced and support them, they sort of almost feel compelled to have to go back into the same environment. So that's always the risk we have to try and, but that's where we, it feels like Phil, getting these really trusting relationships, because so someone in the community can go, actually, although that person has come forward as a support and help, they might not be the best person. Because of some of the dynamics. And we don't understand those, we don't know those, but...
So in those cases, how you will deal with it? Do you ask the family, do you need someone from your community, or
ultimately it relies on relationships within those communities, so we can get confidentially, even that, hey, I don't think the safety plan's the right one here, or actually they just have felt pressure from the wider whānau or the wider community to go back into the same environment.
Right.
You know, and they might be saying to you they're okay, and we don't think they are. And we might have picked up on that already, you know, and we're sensitive though, because, you know, because what often people, in my experience, is what people think they would do if they saw a problem or an issue. They think everyone else would do. One of the biggest myths is around sexual violence is if you're sexually assaulted, you would report it straight away. You'd run down to the police station, you know. And so, in my time and experience in say, you know, in criminal investigation on sexual assaults and criminal court trials, is most of them are quite long delayed reporting. You know,
Right.
and so the defence often is, well, this terrible thing happened to you and you didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And so in a criminal justice system, we have 12 people, a jury, who are making a decision who you've never met.
Yeah.
And they all go, oh, if I got sexually assaulted, I'd run down to the police station. You know? So I think, you know, so
You're right. Yeah.
so,
yeah.
so that's why we need to have a collaborative approach in family harm, because police, we don't know all the answers, you know. And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I
So,
mean,
in that trust, you know, and because
Exactly.
actually we want to. And the other issue, the actual one we, you know, might be part two, is there's really minimal support for perpetrators. And really, if we want to prevent or minimise or eliminate family harm, well, who are the ones that are doing it? The perpetrators. So, so we need to get that sort of, whilst they need to be accountable for their actions, we also do need to support them to find out what is that underlying factor. Because we all know, it's well documented now, there often is some really dark
Yeah.
things in their past, you know. And then that something like having no money or drinking too much then sparks that demon, which then results in in harm. There.
Into that.
So yeah,
You're
so I
right,
could talk
yeah.
all night about
No, I think you do.
you know, and
You're right. It's just cool.
it's so real challenges there, but yeah, and that sort of in those ethnic minorities,
Yeah.
our real challenges, and then they have that perception that it's just they've just come to the police, you know. We
Yeah.
haven't got these other connections, you know. So whilst you might report it to the police, it might not be the police that come back to you.
Yeah. Look, Terry, this is just a wonderful, like you said, this is a big topic, and it's we can talk more about different. Hopefully, we may see if there will be chances. Maybe we can invite you again. We talk on the specific scenarios and areas, but because you really touch base in very, very important topic about there's a lot of communities who I know they may not report. There's a lot of reasons for that. They feel very threatened from a family itself, from a community, from not knowing how to report. That's the first barrier they get. Who to trust? How? Then they will afraid of say, will the police share it with everyone? Will be in media and etc. All of that. So there's a lot of things. So we hope now we get more like initiative, make it easier for communities, safer to be reported in timely manner as well, because those communities may come from a background, a lot of threat and a lot of it follow them as well, because I get experience. Sometimes we have some countries, they may have their own intelligence. We feel that kind of scary because they may say, if I want to go, they may still, catch me, even if I'm in a safe country. So I think we need more like discussions on understanding the view from the community, their challenge, their concerns, to help the organization like police and others to a proper interventions. I remember there was quickly, I was one of the teacher I had in my first job in this country. I had an issue with two students in the school, and the principal wanted directly to call the family. I stopped him. I said, if you do this, you're putting more fire because the culture of the
Yes.
students do not accept something that what happened in the school. We need to find a different way to talk to the family, and then. So I was lucky that maybe the school were like they found someone who I could intervene to stop the harm go more. So definitely later we had a conversation with principal. We took another person, then we solved the issue
Yeah.
in a way that's appropriate. So we need maybe more conversation on to understand our communities, understand their views, involving them into prevention in a safe manner, and also resource. We need more resource into this department, right? So we hope that's my message for listening to resource more. And going to that one, Terry, what will be your message in to the people who are watching and listening to this podcast?
You know, my message is, and it probably comes back to that very first question about why, 25 years still doing it, and it's just wanting to give, all people, in tamariki, young people, but adults, just the opportunity to thrive, just the opportunity. And family harm really significantly negatively impacts that opportunity. And that's when we see all the other detrimental parts that impact a person's life negatively. So, like I say, we can report it, then we can start looking into it, and people can start to thrive.
I love that.
So much, Terry.
Yes, everyone needs opportunity. Love that.
I think it also, just want to say, it warms my heart that we have people who care so much in the police, working on these issues. It's that you're so dedicated, and it clearly is coming from such a place of love. So it's really encouraging for me, and I hope all of our audience is really encouraged as well that we've got really loving people working to make our communities better. And so thank you so much, Terry, for talking, sharing all of your wisdom, and hope to have you again on the show soon. Thank you so much for this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciated that, Terry. So, Terry, we have, and this is season 5 for Voice of Aroha, and we have this tradition. We ask our guest a question who been written from the previous guests.
Oh, I see.
You will not know who was that, but they wrote a question and about anything. Then good luck on that.
Yes.
But we will ask you that, and then also will be opportunity. We will ask you to write us a question for the next guest, who
Okay.
may know you don't know who will be the one.
Yeah.
But here's a question from our previous guest. It says, if you could meet one person who has passed away, who would be and why? What a big question.
From what we've all been talking about, this will probably sound a little bit. Sir Don Bradman. So Sir Don Bradman was the greatest batsman, possibly cricketer, in the world to date. And I was an avid cricket, and still am, tragic follower of the game. Spent far too many hours out trying to play it well, and trying to be like Sir Don Bradman. And I share the same birthday as Sir Don Bradman. So I always thought that was meant that I would then become something great too, but it didn't quite happen in there. But that's okay. And then I was fortunate visiting Australia to then go and see his hometown and where he played cricket. And whilst he was a brilliant player, I also really I read a lot about him. And he grew up during those sort of in those years where pretty sort of simple way of life, but he had great sort of values and dedication and that. So and what you would have to perform at the level he did. And so the most famous thing about him is he was has a batting average of 99.5, and in his very last bat of his career, he only needed to score 5 runs to get an overall average of 100. And he was dismissed for 0.
Wow.
So he only got. So it's actually become actually almost more. That he didn't get an average of 100. He got an average of 99.5 because.
Oh wow.
None of us are perfect.
That's
Even
right.
Sir
Yeah.
Don Bradman.
Yeah, okay, well, now we see you hobby cricket. Awesome, Terry. Thank you so much again for
Okay.
all your time and these conversations, and appreciate your time and coming to our show. Thank you.
Thank you.